I'll teach you what happens to people who forget their place in this world. The words slice through the air as Richard Carter holds an iron collar against Marcus Washington's throat, forcing him against the mahogany panels of his private study. A successful black CEO is about to learn that some prejudices run deeper than success can reach, and a father's hatred might cost him everything he claims to protect. But let me take you back to where this story begins, where love first collided with generations of prejudice in the heart of Charleston, South Carolina. Emma Carter sits in her boyfriend's luxury car, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her designer dress. Marcus Washington, one of the youngest CEOs in the tech industry, adjusts his Italian silk tie for the 100th time. The summer heat beats down on them, but their sweat comes from something far more oppressive than the weather. "Your hands are shaking," Emma whispers, reaching over to steady his grip on the steering wheel. "They're just my parents, Marcus. They're going to love you because I love you." Marcus forces a smile, but his eyes betray the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. "Your father is a fourth-generation Charleston elite, Emma. Men like him don't welcome men like me into their families. Not in this part of the country." Times have changed, Emma insists, but her voice wavers. She hasn't told Marcus about the Confederate memorabilia in her father's study, or how he still refers to their century-old plantation house as the legacy. For those watching, don't forget to subscribe to witness more stories that challenge our perspectives and push us toward understanding. Your support helps us continue creating content that matters. The grand columns of the Carter estate loom before them, white giants standing guard over old money and older prejudices. Marcus parks his car, and Emma notices how his Harvard-class ring catches the sunlight, a symbol of achievement that might mean nothing to a man who measures worth by different standards. "Remember," Emma squeezes his hand, "Dad's bark is worse than his bite. He pulled a shotgun on my prom date senior year." "Was your prom date black?" "No, but dash." "Then it's not the same thing, Emma. Not even close." They approach the front door, each step echoing with the weight of what's to come. Behind those doors, Richard Carter sits in his study, nursing his third bourbon of the afternoon, unaware that his carefully constructed world is about to be challenged. The door opens before they can knock. Catherine Carter, Emma's mother, stands there with a practiced smile that freezes when her eyes fall on Marcus. In that split second, years of ingrained prejudice war with Southern hospitality. "Emma, darling." Catherine's voice rises an octave too high. "And this must be Marcus." Before Marcus can extend his hand, Richard Carter's voice booms from inside. "Is that my princess I hear?" Heavy footsteps approach. Emma squeezes Marcus's hand so tight it hurts. The moment of truth arrives with the force of a hurricane making landfall. Richard Carter appears in the doorway, his imposing frame blocking the light from inside. His eyes land on Marcus, then their clasped hands, and something dark and primitive flashes across his face. "Well," Richard says, his southern drawl thick with something that isn't hospitality. "What do we have here?" He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a $100 bill, and holds it out to Marcus. "Thank you for bringing my daughter home, boy. You can go now." "Dad." Emma's voice cracks. "This is Marcus, my boyfriend, the one I've been telling you about for the past year." The $100 bill crumples in Richard's fist. The air becomes thick with unspoken words and centuries of hatred. This isn't just about a family dinner anymore. This is about a battle line drawn in the sand of time, where love stands on one side and generations of prejudice on the other. Catherine's smile becomes strained. "Richard, dear, why don't we all go inside? I've prepared your favorite bourbon-glazed pork chops." But Richard Carter is already reaching for Marcus's suitcase, his movements deliberate, controlled. "Follow me, young man. I have something in my study I'd like to show you before dinner. Something about our family's heritage." As Marcus follows Richard down the shadowy hallway, Emma's words echo in his head. "Dad's bark is worse than his bite." But in the Carter household, some bites carry the poison of centuries, and the antidote might cost more than anyone is willing to pay. The study door closes behind Marcus with the finality of a coffin lid. Richard Carter's private sanctuary smells of leather, tobacco, and something else, the musty scent of history preserved too long past its expiration date. Crystal decanters catch the late afternoon light, turning bourbon into liquid gold. You know, Richard begins, his fingers trailing along a glass display case. My great-grandfather built this house with money from cotton. Real cotton, boy. The kind that built this country. He pauses, watching Marcus's reflection in the glass. But you wouldn't know much about that side of history, would you? Marcus stands straight, his Harvard education and CEO status a shield against the growing tension. Actually, sir, I wrote my thesis on the economic impact of the antebellum South on modern American capitalism. Both perspectives. Richard's laugh is sharp as broken glass. Both perspectives? Tell me, what perspective justifies you dating my daughter? The display case opens with a soft click. Inside, arranged with museum precision, lie the tools of America's darkest chapter. Iron shackles, whips, and there, centered like a crown jewel, a steel collar with cruel spikes pointing inward. This piece, Richard lifts the collar reverently, was used on a young slave who forgot his place. Thought he could court a plantation owner's daughter. His eyes lock onto Marcus. History has a way of teaching lessons, doesn't it? Outside the study, Emma paces the hallway, her mother's words spinning in her head for moments before. Your father means well, Emma. He's just traditional. Traditional. Emma had spat back. Is that what we're calling racism now? Lower your voice. The neighbors dash. The neighbors? Mom, it's 2025, not 1865. Now, Emma's ear pressed against the study door. She hears her father's voice rise. Inside, Richard has moved closer to Marcus, the collar dangling between them like a serpent. You think because you wear fancy suits and run some tech company, you're different? Richard's mask of civility slips. Let me tell you about difference. Difference is what keeps the natural order. Difference is why my daughter will never dash. The study door bursts open. Emma stands there, trembling with rage. Put it down, Dad. Now. Princess, this doesn't concern dash. Put down. Marcus moves toward Emma, but Richard blocks his path. I'm just teaching your friend here about our family heritage. My friend. Emma's laugh is bitter. The man I'm going to marry, Dad. That's who he is. The word marry hits Richard like a physical blow. The collar slips from his fingers, clattering to the floor with an accusatory ring. For a moment, the only sound is the antique grandfather clock, counting down seconds in a room where time seems to have stopped a century ago. Dinner. Catherine's voice carries from the dining room, artificially bright. Everything's getting cold. The dining room gleams with old silver and older pretenses. Catherine has set out the good china, the set that survived Sherman's march, as she loves to remind guests. Tonight, it will witness a different kind of civil war. We say grace in this house, Richard announces as everyone takes their seats. Dear Lord, we thank you for this food, and ask you to protect our family from outside influences that might lead us astray. Marcus meets Richard's gaze across the table. Amen. Halfway through the silent dinner, Marcus's phone buzzes. Then again, and again. Important business? Richard's tone suggests nothing could be important enough to interrupt his dinner. Actually, Marcus begins, but Emma cuts in. Dad, did you know Marcus just became CEO of Chapter Tech? The youngest in the company's history. Richard's fork scrapes against china. CEO of Chapter Tech. His face pales slightly. The same Chapter Tech that just acquired Southern Heritage Industries? The very same, Marcus replies, his phone buzzing again. In fact, that might be your board calling now. Something about reviewing all executive positions for compatibility with our new corporate culture. For those following this story of confrontation and change, remember to hit subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing these crucial narratives that challenge our understanding of love, family, and acceptance. The temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. Catherine's hand trembles as she reaches for her wine glass. Richard's world, carefully built on the foundations of privilege and prejudice, begins to crack. Marcus stands, straightening his tie. Mr. Carter, I came here today out of respect for Emma and her family. But respect, like everything else of value, has to be earned. Your daughter taught me that. The dining room's chandelier casts dancing shadows across Richard Carter's face as he processes the revelation. His company, Southern Heritage Industries, the last piece of his family's legacy, now answers to the very man he just threatened with a slave collar. You're bluffing? Richard manages, but his bourbon glass trembles slightly. Marcus pulls out his phone, placing it on the table. Chapter Tech meeting minutes, dated yesterday. Motion to acquire Southern Heritage Industries, passed unanimously. Effective immediately. He slides the phone toward Richard. Your board members voted for the merger. All except you, who didn't attend the meeting. Catherine's silverware clatters against her plate. Richard, what's he saying? He's saying, Emma interjects, her voice steel wrapped in silk, that Dad's company now belongs to my fiancé. The word fiancé explodes like a bomb in the room. Richard's face cycles through shades of red and white. We were going to announce it properly, Marcus adds. But given the circumstances, Richard stands abruptly, his chair screeching against hardwood. My study. Now. No, Emma steps between them. Whatever you have to say it here. No more secrets, Dad. No more heritage lessons. You don't understand, Princess. Our family our family. Emma's laugh is bitter as unripe persimmons. Let me tell you about our family, Dad. Great-grandfather Carter? The one you're so proud of? His empire was built by broken backs and stolen lives. That heritage you cherish? It's soaked in blood. Catherine rises, her southern composure cracking. Emma Rose Carter. That's enough. No, Mom. It's not enough. It's never been enough. Emma pulls out an old photograph from her purse. Remember Sarah Jenkins, Dad? Your childhood best friend. Richard freezes. The name hangs in the air like Spanish moss. I found this in the attic last summer. Emma continues, sliding the yellowed photograph across the table. It shows two children, one white, one black, smiling on a tire swing. Before you learned to hate. Before grandfather taught you about keeping to your own kind. Marcus studies the photograph. Sarah Jenkins, the Sarah Jenkins Foundation for Educational Equality. Richard sinks back into his chair, the fight draining from him. We weren't allowed to play together after I turned 12. Father said it wasn't proper. She still lives in Charleston, Emma reveals. She's a civil rights attorney now. Funny how some people learn from the past, while others just worship it. The grandfather clock in the hallway strikes 9, each chime an accusation. Richard stares at the photograph, at his younger self untainted by prejudice. I lost her number, he whispers, more to himself than anyone else. After the tire swing incident. Father was so angry. Marcus leans forward. She's on our company's board now, Mr. Carter. Has been for years. She still asks about you. Something breaks in Richard's expression. A dam holding back decades of programmed hatred. The last thing she said to me. She said, Richie, one day you'll have to choose between what's right and what's easy. Catherine touches her husband's hand. Richard, maybe it's time. The silence stretches, broken only by the distant sound of cicadas through the open window. Finally, Richard looks up at Marcus, truly seeing him, for the first time. You love her. His voice is rough with emotion. More than my next breath, sir. Richard stands again, slower this time. He walks to the antique cabinet in the corner, removing a dusty bottle of bourbon. This was my father's. He saved it for my wedding day. He places it on the table. I think Sarah would want us to open it tonight. Emma's eyes fill with tears as Richard pours for glasses. He hands the first to Marcus. To new beginnings. Richard raises his glass. And to the man who reminded me of who I used to be, before I forgot. Later that night, as Marcus and Emma prepare to leave, Richard disappears into his study. He returns with a small box. "These," he says, handing it to Marcus, "belong in a museum, not in a house where love is trying to grow." Inside the box lies the steel collar and other relics of hatred. Marcus nods, understanding the gesture's weight. "I'll make sure they're donated to the Civil Rights Museum," he promises, "as a reminder of how far we've come and how far we still have to go." Before you leave the story, remember to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful narratives of transformation and hope. As Marcus's car disappears down the magnolia-lined driveway, Richard Carter stands in his doorway, the weight of generations lifting from his shoulders. Tomorrow, he'll make a phone call he's waited 40 years to make. "Hello, Sarah? It's Richie." Because sometimes the hardest chains to break are the ones we forge in our own minds. And the greatest legacy we can leave isn't the one we inherit, but the one we choose to build. Remember, in a world still struggling with the shadows of the past, every step toward understanding, every moment of choosing love over hate, brings us closer to the future we all deserve. One family, one heart, one choice at a time. And as the Carolina moon rises over the Carter estate, it illuminates not just a house, but a home where love finally triumphed over hatred, where the future overcame the past, and where a father learned that the true meaning of legacy lies not in preserving old chains, but in breaking them.